Hey everyone, it's Fox from modelmakingguru.com here, and welcome back to part 6 of our build of the Master Grade 1/100 scale Sinanju Stein budget style. So, where are we up to? Well, after the Q&A thing, all the armour parts are being gunk washed over there somewhere. Well, they've been gunk washed, they're just drying nicely now. Next up, while that's sitting doing that for the next 5 days, and I've got nothing else to do, we'll crack on with the weapons. Two main weapons. The bazooka and the rifle, and there's also the grenades that go on the inside of the shield, and there's the gun thing that goes on the inside of the shield as well. Now, in keeping with the nature of this build, we're not airbrushing and we're not using more than a handful of paints, so we're going to get creative. Now, this is the way the gun goes together, the rifle. This piece goes on top, these pieces go on the side somewhere like this, trigger goes under here, and this piece goes on the end like that. So we're going to be gunmetaling this and chrome silvering it and all that nonsense, but there's only a little bit of it showing, like here. The only bit you're going to see is inside these little vents, so just take that off. You've got all this beautiful detail that you're not actually ever going to see. So for the sake of this build, because we're not airbrushing and doing all kinds of different variations on paints, we're just going to paint the bits you can see. So what we're going to do first we're going to move these out of the way. First bit we're going to paint is these parts that you're going to see. We're going to use Tamiya X10 gunmetal. Now, if you remember from previous videos, this is a colour that I've said in the past looks different depending on whether you brush paint it or whether you airbrush it. So we're going to be brush painting it, obvs. I think I've also just figured out how to lock my auto exposure so it doesn't change colour every time I move my hand in shot. I like that. Brilliant. I learn something every day. I've only had this phone for like 3 years. So we're going to give the gunmetal a good shake. Shaking, shaking, shaking. Unfortunately, this doesn't have a stirring ball in it. No stirring balls into my paints. Tamiya paints even. So, gunmetal ready. Now you can just slap this stuff on. If you've seen me doing the frames before, you know I get this really light kind of shiny aluminium colour. That's when you airbrush it in thin coats. This stuff we're brushing on, so the best way to approach this, if you just put it on, slap it on really dark, I mean really thick, it'll be dark and speckly. If you put it on a little lighter, you can get similar results as if you'd airbrushed it. Not exactly the same, but similar. So don't go on too heavy. And we're just going to, quite simply, brush paint these bits over. Now, it is quite a thick paint, so go slowly, go steady, and don't go too thick, because it will have some brushy marks. Now, the later plan is, when this is all done, we'll be doing some dry brushing with chrome silver to really bring back the shine. So this is technically the same way I do things when I'm airbrushing a weapon. We're just doing it with brushes instead. Now, it won't give you the smoothest finish in the world. That I will tell you straight away. You may have some brush marks, but as you can see, it's quite straightforward. And that should be all of that part that we're actually going to see once the cover's on. Just get in there. Helps if I do it on camera, doesn't it? So you can see it's not dry yet, but it's got some shine to it, and there's a little bit speckly. But if you were to slap this on really heavy, it would just look like almost like shiny black with speckles in it, which would not be awesome. Just to do this side. Again, just go lightly. Don't slap it all over like it's going out of fashion. I'm taking most of the paint back off the edge of the paint pot. And it's kind of like a... You're trying to aim for this kind of almost like molten lead or solder colour, really. And this is going to be the dark shade, because the gun's going to be, final gun colour is going to be a mixture of two shades, a light dry brush of bright and shiny chrome silver, and this will be the shadow colour, the dark colour. So it's just like painting anything else. Put a little bit on that bit there. Just in that little crevice. Crevice. I like the word crevice. And that, I think, if I've not misremembered it, should be as much as you're actually going to see. There. Next bit is this bit, and I'm not quite sure because I don't want to get all the pieces on because I don't want to jam this thing together because I've still got to put the trigger in yet. So I'm just going to paint a whole chunk of it just to be safe. So what we need to do is give my brush a quick clean. The reason I'm doing this now is just to, as I've said before, acrylic paints dry real fast. So every now and then if you're brushing, just give your brush a quick splodge, clean out. Just gets rid of any dried up gunk on the brush. Makes life a little easier. And I'm going to give the paint another shake. Shaking, 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 shaking. Thing with metallics is, the metallic flecks is generally metallic particles in the paint, in suspension, so they will settle down to the bottom of the pot quite quickly, so you have to keep stirring them regularly. Might go for a slightly bigger brush. Shall I go for a bigger brush? Let's go for a bigger brush. Because this is a bigger area. So I'm going to go for a slightly bigger brush. Don't grab it by the bit I've just painted. I also need to figure out how I'm going to handle this. Let me get a clippy stick. Et voilà. Et voilà. Perfect. Parfait. Right, so this part should go over here. So I'm not going to see any of that, but I'm going to see this part here. And this piece on the end should go over there. So I might see this bit, and I'll definitely see that bit underneath. So I'm going to paint those. So let's get on with the killing. Again, just go lightly and slowly. Make sure it's in shot, of course, as well. Now this has been gloss varnished. I think I gloss varnished this bit. I hope I did. If not, it hasn't. But hey, it's just like painting the inner frame. I actually can't remember if I gloss varnished it or not. So obviously it doesn't matter. But I'm just going slowly. And the thing with metallics is, don't worry if they don't look fabulous on the first coat. You may end up having to do more than one coat. When you're airbrushing them, you build it up in light coats. So if it's a bit streaky on the first coat, like I said on the inner frame, don't worry. Just let it dry and come back to it with the second coat. Look at you watching me paint. For a long time I haven't been able to film stuff like this. Now I can. So I'm just going to get a bit more on there. Get these top edges, because you never quite know unless you put it together. See, I could put this together and know exactly what I'm going to see, but it's kind of a pain to take apart again once you put it together because it's such a tight fit. I could, of course, have nipped the ends off some of the pins at jaunty angles to give me that ability to take the thing apart again, which is what most Gunpla builders do. Many builders will actually pre-assemble a Gunpla to see how it goes together and then take it apart again before they paint it. I don't do that because, you know why? Because I'm far too lazy. Really can't be bothered building a kit, then taking it apart again and building it again. So I'm sure this is really exciting for you to watch. Don't worry if you do get some brush marks. A lot of this will be lost when you do your highlight coats with the chrome silver. It will go. So don't worry too much. Hope all the lighting on here is decent and you can see it. If not, don't. So I'm going to paint around here because I don't know exactly how much the trigger and trigger guard actually cover up. But just go lightly. Again, I'm not slapping it on, just in light, thin coats. If you do go too heavy in one bit, just move the paint around in the few moments that you have before it goes too dry, just to spread it out a bit. Thank you to everyone who sent questions in on the Q&A, by the way. Them's were some good questions. I enjoy doing those. I always get these nerves. I think, I'm never going to be able to get anything interesting and like get at least 45 minutes or more out of this. And I do. Oh, if you're wondering what happens to episode 5, which was the first part of the Q&A, it is there, but YouTube threw a Thromby. And it did that thing where if you're a YouTube maker and you've uploaded videos before, you know that thing where you upload it first and then it goes into processing when it just renders all the different video formats, resolutions, and it's stuck at 95%. So I deleted it, re-uploaded it, it's stuck at 95%. So I deleted it, re-uploaded it, stuck at 95%, and it kept doing that, even though part 6 had gone up and uploaded and gone through with no problems. So after a while I was like, you know what, I can still actually make it, it's still actually viewable. Screw it, we'll just make it viewable. So it is on there. You can watch it. I had to record both at 720p, not 1080p, because of problems with the encoding, because they're very image heavy. So it's on there. On the playlist it just shows as deleted video. I don't know why. So I don't know why it does that, but it does. But it's still watchable. So if you've seen part 6 and this one and you don't know where part 5 is, just go to like one of the other parts, go to the playlist, and hopefully you all know how to use playlists. Go to the Guru YouTube homepage, click on playlists, choose this playlist for the Sinanju build, and it'll be there. It'll show us deleted video, but just click on it anyway and it'll play as normal. And I have to say, I still don't understand people that upload videos and don't put them in playlists. Here's a handy hint. If you're a YouTuber like me and you want me to watch a series of videos about one thing, let's say you're doing a build. Like me, I might do 10 or 11 videos on a specific build. If you want me to watch all the videos in your series, then you must put your videos in a playlist. Why? Because if I watch part 1 of your video build series, or whatever your video series is, and then I want to watch part 2, if it's just a video, then how the hell am I supposed to find part 2? It might show it in the top right of my page with the suggested videos, but it might not. And if it doesn't, I'm not going to start doing a huge search on your list of 3,000 videos you've uploaded. I'm not doing that, I haven't got time. So handy tip for all fellow YouTubers out there, or people out there who watch these videos and start fancying doing their own. For the love of dog, put your videos into playlists. So I can look at it and say, right, you've got 12 videos about how to build X, Y or Z. I shall now go and watch all those videos. Because on the right hand side of a playlist, as you'll know from this one, it shows you all the other videos in that playlist. So handy hint, for the love of dog, playlist your videos. It's very frustrating. Otherwise I'll watch one and go, that's great, I want to watch more, but I can't find it, so screw it, I'll go and watch somebody else's. So that is now done, I think. If I could just stop knocking the camera wire. That's done, so I need to leave this to dry for a bit. Make sure that's there. Underside, that needs painting. So I needed to leave this to dry now. Being a nice acrylic paint, it won't take long. And being an acrylic paint, I can spam it with the hairdryer actually, just to get it to dry. I need to leave it long enough to dry to then have other things put on it. So you can see there, we've got the gunmetal coat. It's got a few brush marks in there. It's not absolutely perfect, but that is fine. Because remember, this isn't a pristine showroom kit, this is weathered. So the fact there's some brush marks in there, not a problem. Because we're going to do dry brushing over this later anyway. So that's that part done. Oops, missed that bit there. So let me go and put this to one side and we'll do the next bit. Back in a moment. And we are back. Right. That's the gun we did earlier, but as you can see from the little hints of carnage around me, I've done everything else as well while I've been off camera. Painted the chipping on the gun armour parts. You can see here I've just used the same silver grey, a MiG 212 as before. We're painting onto white, so I just use the same, it'll be consistent. Exactly the same technique as I did on the chipping video a couple of 3 videos ago. So no difference, there's no point me showing you again. Exactly the same technique. These have been gloss varnished, chips painted on top. I also painted the ammunition for the bazooka. Put it the right way around, that'd be helpful. I don't understand what I'm doing. Do you know? Fingers and thumbs. And because we're working on a limited palette, of course, I'd normally have, say, bronze or copper or a red or something in here, but we haven't got that. We haven't got those colours, and we're not going to start adding things just because we want them. So, I used MIG steel for this side, steel 191, which we used on the inner frame, and this is just more gunmetal. And you can see here, I did the top and bottom part with gunmetal to be a contrast, but you can see here where I gently put these together. They're not fully together, but you'll see there's 2 different colours. So it just makes it a bit more interesting. And I kept the gunmetal on these top bits because it just suggests it's part of this clip mechanism. Also did the bit that goes on the back of that, gunmetal as well. The gun, or the sort of weapon that goes on the shield, that's just gunmetal. Also did picked out some little details in the ammo steel. Just little things like that and that. Add a little sort of ring there. What else did I do? That's that on there. On the top part, I just picked out these little details here. Little bits of bolts and nuts. I have a special plan for this part in here, which I believe is the sight. And we'll show that later. Now, the reason I painted these steel now and I've done it now, basically, is because I know I'm going to matte varnish this. This is going to be a matte weapon. And I've not done chipping on this as well for the same reason. I'm going to be matte varnishing it. But I want the chips to have a certain look, and I also want this to look different to the other gunmetal parts. So we're going to pick up the shine back on this later. So I'm quite happy to paint that on now and matte varnish it. I also did the belt, the shoulder strap clip as well. Which bizarrely, even though these silver bits here were painted in steel, this is also painted in steel, but this comes out smooth and shiny and that comes out slightly less smooth. I don't know why that happened. But I'm going to keep this, I'm going to probably just gloss varnish this and keep it there. If I keep putting stuff over here, it's because the lens on my camera is here, but this is the centre of my phone. It's really confusing. My phone is kind of here, but the camera's there. So this is the centre, but to me that's the centre. It's weird. So yeah, I'll probably just gloss varnish that and keep it as it is. So what's next? So we've got all those bits done. Next is we want to get this gunmetal looking less like dark and more like shiny. So it's time to bring in the X11 Chrome Silver. Let me just get all this shenanigans out of the way, and then we shall get that done. So the bits I want to dry brush are the gunmetal parts. And I'm doing this now because of the reasons, basically. I'm going to gloss varnish this once it's done. It hadn't been gloss varnished. And that's a good thing, because if you gloss varnish it and I'm painting big flat areas like this, the paint wouldn't have taken very well. So yeah, it's good that I didn't gloss varnish it. So I want to dry brush these parts. I'm not dry brushing anything else because the other stuff's going to be matte coated or gloss coated, one or the other first, because there's going to be gunk washing on all of this as well. So let's get our Chrome Silver. X11. We need a piece of tissues. Because I've figured out how to preset my contrast and white balance and stuff, it doesn't freak it out now. Look, see, it doesn't go bright, dark, bright, dark. I am genius. God, I'm so clever, me. And we have my Chrome Silver dry brushing brush, which you've seen before. You've seen this before, you've seen me do it, but I will explain it for the newbies amongst you who haven't seen this before. I always like to pretend or assume that perhaps this is the first time you've watched one of my video series. So, let me move this over here. Shall I just move the camera? Will that be easier? There we go. Does that make more sense? Because it's where I'm kind of doing stuff. Do you know, I'm so special. So, Chrome Silver, nicely stirred. We're going to take my flat brush, dunk it in, get it nice and wet. We'll get most of the paint off. Take your piece of tissue, get most of that paint off. I'll tell you what, Chrome Silver, the metallic paints, and Chrome Silver especially, are one of the Tamiya paints that smell really nice. Now what we're going to do is we want to bring this back. It's a dark colour, we want to bring it back. So what we're going to do is we're going to dry brush. Now some people do dry brushing just to get edges. I'm doing this to overall lighten the colour. I've got most of the paint off. So initially I'm just going to go perpendicular to edges to try and catch those edges. I'm hardly putting on any pressure at all. And depending on how much paint you've got, it gives you a different result. So you can see this. Now what this will do is, the chrome silver is a lighter, brighter colour than the gunmetal. And initially it's just going to pick up on the edges. But then if I do it right, it should also give some slight patchiness and like little stripes and streaks, very, very subtly. But it will also have more shininess because it's a more reflective colour than the gunmetal. So all I'm doing is I'm doing it perpendicular to an edge like that, not like this, like that, just so it catches edges, and then sometimes it catches the edge but then it drags along the surface and you get that kind of fading effect. But because it's a metallic colour, it just makes it brighter and lighter. And this is how I do, if you've not seen them before, this is how, when I'm doing inner frames, sometimes what I'll do is, if I'm airbrushing them and I'm painting the inner frame, I'll airbrush it, gunmetal, too much paint, you want almost no paint on the brush. I'll airbrush it gunmetal to get the dark tone, and then I'll dry brush this stuff over the top, and it can go from this dark metal colour to looking like shiny, shiny aluminium. And you could say, well, why not just paint it that colour in the first place? Well, I don't want just a solid aluminium colour. The beauty of doing it this way is not only does it go light and shiny, but you also get that slight patchy fading effect. Some areas where it collects more, and I'll show you a close-up in a second when I've done it. But I always like to say it's that kind of slightly tarnished but not too tarnished metal look. And there's no real way to explain it, but it's a bit like a reverse gunk wash in a way. When I do, say, a piece over here, where the gunk wash you want to get the paint in the recesses, when you're doing this, you're keeping the paint out of the recesses. And this is the Canon thing for the shield. And when I first discovered doing this, just using chrome silver and gunmetal, it's so simple. And a lot of model making is actually really simple and straight. I'm not even thinking doing this. I'm just doing it. Like there. Gone over the tip of the barrel, so the barrel of the barrel now looks nice and shiny on the tip. Inside is gunmetal, so it looks darker. And just feather it a little bit on the edge, and it's got a slightly worn look. And like I say, the idea I'm trying to create is that it's a gunmetal-y type metal. It's got some wear on it, so it's dirty and dark, but where there's been more contact and rubbing, it's been weathered almost clean. It's almost been rubbed clean, so the shiny bits, unlike, say, a painted surface where the paint chips off, these are the shiny bits. The shiny bits is where the wear and tear has occurred. So you've got the tarnishing of the metal where the dark bits are, and the bright bits are where the tarnishing's been rubbed off as well, and you've just got shiny metal underneath. Did you like that? So, that is that bit done. That was 16 minutes of waffle. Wow. What is next? Next up is going to be, we've got to start on the outer parts of the grenade launcher, the rocket launcher, the bazooka. God, I can't talk. It's so hot, I can't talk. But that's going to be gunk washed first, and we're going to do the chipping after. So I need to let this dry. Then we'll get these gloss varnished, and then we'll do a gunk wash. So back in a moment. I don't know what that noise means. I just need to go and cool off now because it's really hot. Okay, everything has now been done. All the chipping is on these parts. Everything's been gloss varnished. I also went ahead and added some chipping, some little amount of chipping to the bazooka and the bazooka parts. not too much. I went ahead and used the same chipping technique as we've used so far, using some of the steel MiG 191. And I've not done too much because what comes next is going to discolour this and matte it down slightly, and then later on we'll do a bit more chipping just to have some brighter spots. I want a variation in the chipping. So, one other thing I've done, I also added some white into here. This is what I'm considering the optical sight. And the reason I've painted that white in there, and it's not actually white because we haven't got white in our selection of paints. I didn't want to add white paint, so I used the MiG 119 Cold Grey, which is just off white. This is going to be where the Tamiya clear green goes. The reason I've put white in there is so the clear green shines a bit more and is a bit brighter. If I just left that as dark grey, it would just look like black. So painted it white first, so it really helps that green shine. It's rough around the edges here, but that's fine because we're going to be doing dry brushing, which will smooth off those edges and make it all blend in. So, what's next? Oh, you know what's coming next. Starship filth. So, basically, what happens now is this.